My father died on a Tuesday in October. By Thursday, my Uncle Gerald had already made a list. I did not know about the list until the will reading, which took place in the conference room of an attorney named Howard Place of Place Estate Law on Dunmore Street in Callaway County. Howard was a thin man with careful handwriting and the particular stillness of someone who has watched too many families fall apart across a conference table. He kept a box of tissues near the window. I noticed it immediately. I had learned to notice things like that. There were 6 of us in the room. My mother had passed 4 years earlier. What remained was my father's side, my Uncle Gerald, his wife Patrice, their son Derek, my father's younger sister Marlene, and me. Howard read the will in full before taking questions. Gerald received the farmhouse on Route 9 and the surrounding 12 acres of cleared pasture. Derek received the equipment, 2 tractors, the grain auger, the flatbed trailer, and the contents of the machinery barn. Marlene received my father's investment account, which Howard noted had a current balance of $61,000. I received a rural parcel, 41 acres on the county's eastern edge off Briar Creek Road. No structure, no utilities, assessed by Callaway County at $28,000. Howard's voice did not change when he read it. He kept the same careful tone he'd used for the farmhouse and the investment account, as if the numbers were equivalent, as if none of us could feel the distance between them. Gerald did not wait until we were outside. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me with the particular expression of a man who believes he is being generous simply by not saying more. "That parcel's been sittin' though since your grandfather's time," he said. "Overgrown. No road. County tried to buy it twice and walked away both times." He paused. "Worthless dirt. You'd need a miracle to move that." Patrice touched his arm, not to stop him, but the way you touch someone when you agree with them and want them to know it. I thanked Howard Place. I collected my copy of the deed. I drove home. I want to be honest about what I felt in those first days. It was not rage. It was something quieter and more corrosive. The specific humiliation of being handed the thing no one else wanted, and then being watched to see how you'd react. My father had loved me. I believed that completely. But he had also let Gerald influence him in ways I had not fully understood until that conference room. Or maybe he hadn't. Maybe that's what I told myself. What I knew for certain was this. I owned 41 acres of Callaway County, and every person in that room believed it was worth less than a used tractor. I drove out to Briar Creek Road on the Saturday after the reading. The parcel was not easy to find. The county's recorded access point was a gap in an old fence line off a gravel road that didn't appear on most maps. I parked on the shoulder and walked in through knee-high grass and stands of young cedar that had seeded themselves across what might have once been a field. The ground was firm. That surprised me. I had expected soft, wet soil. Another swamp. Another punchline. But the earth beneath the grass was dense and dry, a red clay subsoil that held your weight without shifting. I walked the perimeter as best I could. The eastern boundary ran along a low ridge. The northern edge dropped into a shallow drainage corridor, dry in October. The western line was marked by a rusted wire fence my grandfather had strung sometime in the 1970s, still standing, posts still solid in the clay. 41 acres, overgrown? Yes. No utilities? Yes. No road in, technically, but solid ground. And something else I noticed standing on that eastern ridge looking west. The back edge of the Callaway Commerce Park was visible from where I stood. Not the buildings themselves, but the access road lights, the perimeter fence, the cleared buffer zone the county had graded 2 years ago when the park expanded its second phase. I stood on that ridge for a long time. I called a woman named Susan Hall on the following Monday. Susan had been a commercial real estate agent in Callaway County for 19 years. I had used her once, briefly, during a property search years earlier that had come to nothing, but I remembered her as someone who answered her own phone and did not perform optimism. I described the parcel. I gave her the tax parcel number and the Briar Creek Road location. There was a pause on her end. "Who told you to call me?" she asked. "No one. I looked you up." Another pause. "I know that parcel," she said. "Your father's land." "Langra." "Yes." I could hear her thinking. "Don't do anything with it yet. Don't list it. Don't talk to developers. Don't tell your family anything. Give me a few days." I asked her why. "Because I know something about that corridor," she said, "and I want to look at a few things before I tell you what I think it means." Susan called back on Thursday. She had pulled the Callaway County infrastructure planning files, which are public record, but require knowing where to look and what the language means when you find them. She had also made 2 calls, one to a contact at the county engineer's office, one to a commercial broker in the eastern corridor she had worked with on 3 prior transactions. "The Commerce Park expansion," she said, "is not finished. Phase 2 was the road in the buffer. Phase 3 is a logistics and light manufacturing cluster on the eastern edge. The county approved the master plan 14 months ago. It's not public yet in a way most people have noticed, but it's in the capital improvement budget and it's moving. I waited. Your parcel sits directly adjacent to the Phase 3 boundary, she said. The county needs a utility corridor and a secondary access road to serve the new cluster. The most direct route runs across the northwest corner of your 41 acres. She paused. I want to get an appraiser out there before we go any further. Someone who knows the corridor, someone whose numbers will hold up. I told her to make the call. The appraiser's name was Leonard Baird, Baird Commercial Appraisal on Sutter Street in the county seat. He had done appraisal work on 4 of the Commerce Park Phase 2 properties and 2 of the adjacent agricultural parcels that had converted to commercial use in the prior 18 months. Susan trusted his numbers. More importantly, she trusted that his numbers were defensible. Leonard drove on the following Tuesday. He spent 2 hours on the parcel. He walked the ridge. He paced the northwest corner where the utility corridor would need to run. He stood at the eastern fence line and looked toward the Commerce Park perimeter for a long time. He had a rolled survey map with him that he kept consulting, holding it up and orienting it against the tree line and the access road lights in the distance. I followed him and said very little. Susan had told me to let him work. When he was done, we stood at my car on the Briar Creek Road shoulder. Leonard rolled a survey map and slid it under his arm. He looked at the fence line. He looked at his notes. He looked at me. 41 acres, he said. Corridor adjacent. Utility access demand confirmed. Phase 3 boundary placement. He said it the way a man says something he has already calculated twice and does not need to recalculate. I'll have the formal report to Susan by Friday, but I'll tell you the number now if you want it. I told him I wanted it. He said one sentence. I made him repeat it. He repeated it without changing a single word. The number was $580,000, not for all 41 acres, for the Northwest 22, which was the section with corridor value. The remaining 19 acres of ridge and drainage ground carried a separate agricultural to commercial conversion value of approximately $140,000, given the rezoning pathway Susan had identified. Total appraised value somewhere between $680,000 and $720,000, depending on how the county structured the utility easement negotiation. My family had watched Howard Price read me a $28,000 assessment and believed that was the end of the conversation. Leonard Baird filed his report on Friday morning. Susan called me at 9 a.m. when she had reviewed it. It's clean, she said. The methodology is solid. If anyone challenges the number, it holds. I thanked her. I asked her what the next step was. I've already had an inbound inquiry, she said. One of the Commerce Park Phase 3 developers. They've been watching the corridor parcels. Someone in the county engineer's office talks, apparently. She paused. They want to meet. Gerald called me for the first time that Tuesday afternoon for hours after Leonard Baird had spoken his one sentence on the Briar Creek Road shoulder. I did not know yet how Gerald had heard. Later, I understood it was Derek, who knew someone at the county assessor's office who had seen an appraisal inquiry filed on the parcel number. Gerald called at 2:17 p.m. I let it go. He called at 3:44 p.m. I let it go. He called at 5:09 p.m. and left a voicemail. His voice was different from the conference room voice. The conference room voice had been loose and certain, the voice of a man disposing of something minor. This voice was tearful, measured. He said he had been thinking about the estate division. He said my father had always intended the family's land holdings to benefit everyone. He said he thought there might be an opportunity to revisit the parcel arrangement in a way that made sense for everyone involved. He called a 4th time at 7:22 p.m. He did not leave a message. I did not call back. I met with the developer, a project manager named Chris Owens from Meridian Land Development, operating under the Phase 3 Contractor Consortium, 10 days after Leonard's appraisal. The meeting was at Susan's office on Commerce Boulevard. Patricia Ewan, a real estate attorney Susan had recommended, sat beside me. Chris Owens knew the parcel. He had the same corridor maps Leonard had used. He did not try to negotiate the location's value. He knew what it was worth to the project, which meant he knew it was worth more to him than to anyone else. We went back and forth on price over 3 meetings across 2 weeks. The final number was $698,000. Patricia reviewed the purchase agreement over 2 days. Clean title, no liens, no encumbrances, no conditions attached to my inheritance. The deed had transferred from my father's estate to me outright. There was nothing Gerald could attach to, no mechanism he could use, no argument that survived contact with the actual documents. Patricia sent a courtesy notice to Howard Place's office confirming the pending sale, standard procedure on estate-originated property. Gerald hired an attorney. The attorney sent a letter arguing that the parcel's true value had been misrepresented in the estate division and requesting a reopening of probate. Patricia responded in 4 paragraphs. The appraisal at time of distribution was a county assessment, not a commission valuation. The rezoning pathway and corridor development were post-inheritance events. The estate had been distributed, executed, and closed. There was no legal basis for reopening. Gerald's attorney did not respond to Patricia's letter. The sale closed on a Wednesday morning. I was in Patricia's office. I signed. The wire came through before noon. I sat in my car in the parking structure on 5th Street afterward and thought about my father. Not the will reading, not Gerald's voice in that conference room. I thought about something earlier. A drive we had taken once years ago out on Briar Creek Road in the late afternoon. My father had parked on the shoulder, the same way I had parked 2 months earlier. He had walked me to the fence line and pointed to the ridge. He hadn't said much. He rarely did. He just stood there with his hands in his coat pockets looking at it. I think he knew it was worth more than anyone around him understood. I think he knew I was the only one who would take the time to find out why. I don't know if that's true, but I let myself believe it. Gerald still has the farmhouse on Route 9, 12 cleared acres and a grain auger and a name on a deed. I have $698,000 and a real estate attorney who answers on the first ring. He has not called again. Neither has anyone.